Thanks, guys, for agreeing to do this with me. And one of the things, Business Insider just put out a big ranking of important executives in the mobile advertising industry. And one of the things that I noticed about it was that the guys nearer the top of the ranking tend to be in some of the, and I'm going to insult about half the people in the room here probably, tend to be in some of the most boring, least imaginative forms of mobile advertising and marketing. And the guys at the bottom of the ranking who are dealing with the least revenues have some of the more interesting business models. And you know, this is one of the issues with mobile advertising, isn't it? A lot of people see mobile ads inside apps or on games, and it's just a tiny little banner, and they click away from it. They don't even look at it, and conversion rates are very low. So let's talk about that. First of all, can any of you think of any good examples of companies that are really doing very good corporate image, product branding campaigns in mobile where they're literally not looking for that final click to a conversion purchase? It's just like, almost like TV branding, but in mobile. Start with you, Mo.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about, you know, some of the work that a lot of my clients are doing, especially in, you know, not to shill for my clients, but you know, Procter & Gamble specifically, we've seen a lot of very specific, very quantitative lifts in awareness, sponsorship association, et cetera, through mobile. And the focus there hasn't necessarily, it's been really focused in two areas. One, in video, and two, in anything that's in context.
So what's an example?
Yeah, so what I mean by that is in video, for example, you know, the three tenets that we look at is it needs to be in context, it needs to inform or entertain, and the last one is that we need to make sure that we're enabling the consumer's activity in a way that, you know, ultimately doesn't interrupt them, but continues their journey in whatever they're trying to achieve, whether it be utility, whether it be entertainment. So in the case of video, we've literally taken the concept of pre-roll, which many people don't like, but it's been proven time and again to be a simple yet effective branding mechanism, and scaled that in a very screen-neutral way. So, you know, for example, when we talk to any of the video publishers out there, we're looking cross-screen and look at mobile as not only an independent
but at Procter,
screen.
for instance, what is an example of a brand at Procter that is doing something where we could see this?
With Procter, I mean, we do it across all of the brands. So you look at Gillette, you look at Secret, you look across all of the portfolio. I think some of the younger brands perform better. So CoverGirl, for example, we have not only video advertising, but also we see there to be a lot of effectiveness through app advertising as well. And again, I'm not talking about direct response. I'm not talking about driving engagement. I'm talking about looking at how are we driving lifts in awareness and even purchase intent, but not necessarily hard metrics around driving sales, you know, in the way that I think you mean when you say.
Okay, so when you talked about CoverGirl, just describe an example of like a thing I would see if I was a woman who would be targeted for CoverGirl.
If you were a woman who was targeted for CoverGirl, you would go to, let's say you go to a beauty site that has video.
Okay.
Right? You go to you know, a Yahoo Shine, for example. You're watching a video about music, fashion, celebrity.
And so Procter is measuring brand lift rather than sales on that kind of thing?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay. And how about you guys? Because I know the Weather Channel does something very different with this.
Absolutely. First of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that you probably would need to work on something from the CoverGirl range to work with that shadow, but you know, I'm sure there's something we can do there. The weather company, what we've done is we really focused on the fact that it's been difficult for marketers to tell stories within that 300 by 50 banner, or the extended 320 by 50 that we've seen on mobile here. So we've tried to align ourselves with other types of marketing that have worked well, and thought about how that would be woven into the fabric of our product to make a much better experience for both consumers and advertisers. A story I've told previously is that when we look at a magazine like Vogue, the ads in that magazine don't feel like an interruption. They feel like a part of the content experience. They're aspirational. It's a great piece of imagery, and it's educating people about fashion. So when we use those mobile applications, we'd like it to feel somewhat the same way. If people saw, we launched a new format called our branded backgrounds format, where it takes the whole of the home screen of your application and uses that as one large canvas. Now, that in itself might seem like, hey, it's equivalent to an interstitial, it's equivalent to something else. But what we've done is we've really tied them to the weather. So you'll see that when you see a branded background inside our application, if it's a sunny experience, you'll see some sunny clouds in there. And the emotion of the weather then is tied to the emotion of the brand through the magic of storytelling, I guess you could say. And we found that to be a very successful mechanism.
And what clients are using that?
So today, we actually have a campaign running for a healthcare provider. We've run with Disney. We saw their Oz campaign, and we heard, I no specific numbers I can share, but that the campaign performed very, very well indeed.
Okay, and how are they measuring it, though? Are they just looking for brand lift as well?
In the main, they are, yes, but we do have a click-through on the ad itself, and for companies like the entertainment companies, trailer completes is a huge metric for them.
Okay, so they're marketing movies.
Mm-hmm.
They want, okay. So I thought that the huge advantage that the weather app has in mobile, aside from the fact that everyone for some reason needs to have the weather forecast and no one ever deletes the app, is that you want that weather app tied to your zip code. So why are you not serving like lots of hyperlocal advertising, driving me to my local restaurants, that kind of thing?
So we do, first of all. So
that's very bottom of the funnel stuff, right?
It is, and I think there's a few reasons for that. So one is, let's start from the top and go down. First one is a scale issue. So for most buyers, they're looking to buy across millions of impressions. It doesn't scale necessarily for marketers today to be able to traffic a campaign. I mean, you can imagine the look on some poor ad ops person's face when they get an Excel spreadsheet with 6,000 zip codes in or something. It's going to be a nightmare to traffic. And I think there's been technological advances to try and solve for that with programmatic and different pieces of targeting, but the reality is most media is still bought that way.
That's interesting, because that almost sounds like that the advantage of mobile, that it can be hyperlocal and you can really drill down and target people, is actually almost a barrier, because the complexity of it is the barrier. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying at the very high level, when you're trying to buy at scale, we have found that to be one of the challenges. And then at the very bottom level, where you have the mom and pop stores that may be interested in reaching those very specific local needs, they are not able to really demonstrate that type of marketing has been successful for them at this point. It's an attribution challenge. And I think in the middle layer, where you have maybe tier 2 car dealerships looking to drive local inventory or local traffic there, that's where we have seen some success. Certainly we offer dynamic creatives that have worked that way.
Okay. And Mohan, I just want to go back to something you said about Procter only looking at brand lift. Mm-hmm. Why doesn't Procter care about actual return on investment and tracking it all the way to sales? Because there's an argument to be made that they just lost a CEO because he wasn't paying close enough attention to that kind of thing.
I didn't say that they don't. I said that. Okay. There are examples where
presumably they do both in different media.
All in mobile as well. Yes, full funnel in mobile.
Okay.
And I would say also there's probably a little bit of a false dichotomy, whether it's the top or the bottom, because I would say it's the entire funnel. And I would also say that I resist almost the notion that it all happens in mobile, right? We're talking about a consumer who's living everywhere. I don't need to explain that to everyone. And in fact, the biggest area of both opportunity as well as traction that we've had with the clients, with consumers rather, at the bottom of the funnel, isn't actually driving purchases in the mobile device, but it's actually using it as a shopping assistant in store, and knowing that over 80% of CPG products are actually sold in brick and mortar. This is something that they're very, very acutely aware of, and we've been taking advantage of that in store, using utilities like Shopkick, for example, and running campaigns where you are incenting users to both use the app to find out more about products and then ultimately put it in the shopping cart.
Right. That's actually really interesting because, in my opinion, because if you're an app developer or you're a game maker or something, then the mobile thing is pretty easy. The people are there anyway. They know what to do. You don't have to educate them. But if you're selling detergent or soap or razor blades or whatever, exactly. there's no obvious mobile application for Tide.
Well, there's Tide Stain Brain, but yes, not to necessarily sell it directly, right?
Right. Alex from GetGlue, talk about what have you seen clients doing when it comes to corporate image, sort of non-direct response campaigns?
Well, in our world, it's all tied to entertainment. So the equation that brands and also marketers at movie studios and TV networks like about GetGlue is they're basically able to embed their content in a native way within conversations, media that's happening on the second screen. So examples of this is a literally recent campaign that we ran for YouTube Comedy Week. And that sort of was, I think, perfectly executed campaign for them because they were trying to reach comedy fans. And so within GetGlue, they've placed contextual ads, which actually were hilarious, and people had really positive response. Now, that's a bit of cheating because they're a content company, basically, right? So if you basically look at CPG, we had some very successful campaigns with Pepsi during Super Bowl. Again, I think in our world, it all boils down to brands making a piece of content that's interesting to the users, whether it's an image or a video, and then there's got to be a call to action to then, to your point, drive them to some sort of completion and result.
Right. So, I mean, the entertainment and the media people, the movie studios and whatnot, they kind of have it easy in this medium, I would assume, compared to CPG. So who's most innovative? Are the movie studios more innovative than the CPG players?
Movie studios just, I think movie studios just need to make good movies, and they need to make trailers that people can parse. Because some of these trailers are, you sort of watch and you don't even know what to expect. So as long as the trailer is interesting enough, I think that pretty much does the trick. And I think with CPGs and car manufacturers and all other verticals, I think it boils down to, to your point, it's very hard for me to transact and buy a car through a mobile device. Like, I'm probably not going to do that. But so the question is, what's their story? And I think the story starts with hello to the consumer in a way that's interesting. Well, what's interesting? Well, here's our new model, and that's what's cool about it. That's why you should get interested. And I think then there is a sort of specific call to action and helping educate them. So it really can't be a transactional thing for something that's big. Now, for something like soap, I think that's an interesting question. My answer would be, I'm fascinated with the notion that people already advertise on TV, and so could we serve an interesting ad on the second screen that's relevant? So can an advertiser buy TV inventory and second screen inventory? So if I check into the show, and if soap is advertising, could they give me a coupon? I think that's really interesting.
Right. Twitter seems to be going very big into that as well. They seem that Twitter's entire ad offering at this point seems to be keyed to TV watchers and retargeting people who are tweeting about the stuff they're watching, stuff like that. But again, Twitter doesn't have as far as I know, a sort of a conversion mechanism. But if you look at retailers, for instance, Amazon is the best example. Target has one too. But once you've downloaded Amazon's app, that app can cost you a lot of money if you're just sitting on the sofa, just clicking on things you like. You can really run up a bit of a bill with Amazon. So what other retailers are doing this well? Because this is a medium in which, if you really want to get people to shop and get them where they are, that the phone, for some people, is like a companion shopping device, right? A lot of retailers, they both love it because it is a sort of shopping research mechanism, and they also hate it because of the showrooming aspect. Best Buy hates the fact that people go into Best Buy and then look up things on Amazon, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we've noticed with the retailers is they certainly, I can speak from our perspective, the local aspect of our offering is key, but it hasn't really come together to the previous point as to how to market against that. What we're doing now is we're actually looking at taking retailers' own transaction data and correlating that with the weather. So we look at historical weather patterns and we try to predict then what combination of previous, current, and forecast conditions are going to drive specific lift in types of products. And we're helping marketers make those decisions both in a broad aspect, so, hey, when it's sunny, you should be buying this, and in a more specific real-time case, and enabling that through programmatic buying of media. And it's interesting to see as we start to turn over those pieces of data, some of the non-intuitive insights come out. But just to give an example, when you're trying to sell cinema tickets, for example, in Seattle, it's a certain combination of conditions. Maybe a rainy forecast for the weekend is going to cause people to go and say, hey, it's going to rain on the weekend, I may as well go to the cinema. Whereas when we look at Phoenix, it's something more like 110 degrees outside. people want to go somewhere nice and cool because it's just far too hot to do anything else. And so we're able to then look at the local weather overlays of those patterns and apply them to transaction data from specific retailers and use that both for to help drive their overall planning, but then specifically against media.
And are movie studios or movie chains or people like Fandango taking advantage of that data?
It's very new, so for us, we're dealing more directly with the bigger retail, CPG, a number of those companies that would think to be more traditionally weather-driven companies. But I think at the end of the day, we're going to find out that pretty much every business is impacted to a fairly large degree by the weather.
Okay. Have you guys seen any weird sort of counterintuitive shopping patterns that mobile has uncovered?
I keep thinking about it. So I actually pay attention to what my wife is doing on the couch while we're watching TV. She's a big second screen surfer and not necessarily engaging with GetGlue, but she likes to browse shopping sites. And the thing that I noticed that's really interesting is
traffic sites?
No, shopping sites, right?
Oh, shopping sites.
So she would browse. So here's a really interesting pattern. She would not use iPhone to browse through the shopping sites, but she would actually switch to the iPad. So the form factor matters so much. It's actually the small real estate that continues to sort of haunt and become a problem. And I think the interesting parallel is if you think about Google and why it was so successful is because people searched for stuff to buy and there are ads. Now, when you do the same thing on mobile, the same form factor doesn't hold, and therefore there's less opportunity to literally inject the same yellow links that people clicked. And, you know, even as simple of a thing like this just completely throws it off. So in my head, mobile is fundamentally different and needs to be cooked up differently. And the other thing that I think a lot about is I think people haven't perfected shopping gestures on mobile, meaning there's a family of gestures that's going to evolve to help us browse stuff better. And I just think it's not there yet.
That's true. That's true. Shopping design in mobile, in my opinion, is really pretty bad. Amazon is an exception to the rule. I mentioned that, but generally I've found sometimes, you know, I'm on my phone, I see something I want to buy, I'm clicking through the shopping cart experience, and then I have to start punching in my address into the tiniest box ever. You know, and I cannot tell you how many products I have not bought because of that. That is I would imagine, is a huge sort of fall-off part.
And you tend to switch to Amazon and see if you can buy it there, right? Because it's easier.
Well, once you've got this is why I think mobile app installs for shopping could be huge if people can get them right. Because once you've got that app there, all that data is in there, and all you have to do is hit the big fat buy button, right?
Yeah, what I'm hoping to see, I don't know if folks have seen the Tesco example. I think it's Tesco from Korea, the can winner from a couple of years ago. And this was mobile shopping that was executed in subway stations. And what they had was, it was Tesco, the supermarket grocer, had essentially a virtual shelf in all of the subway stations in Seoul. And they allowed people to literally use I think it was either RFID or QR codes, and people could shop in their subway station on their way home from work. And the form factor was perfect for them, and you know, all of their subways, as we're trying to do here in New York,
and was it delivered, or did they have to pick it up?
And it was delivered.
Oh, cool.
And it was delivered to them. I don't know the duration they had to wait, whether it was the same day or a couple of hours or something like that. But it seemed to, you know, to show the opportunity and the promise that we have here with shopping, to a point where I think, you know, we need to start thinking about how are RFIDs going to enable the shopping experience in a much more seamless way and natural, you know, versus having to open an app and load the camera app, you know, part of the QR code reader, and which app are you going to use and what type of QR code is it? Because there are ways you can do shopping even with print or with out of home, which are very natural. And oh, I see this. I don't even need to go to a site or launch an app. I can just tap on it, and
that's another really good
ultimately
example of a sort of a non-electronic brand where there's no, you know, Tesco's selling what? Milk, cheese, lettuce, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's not a natural fit for the sort of palm of your hand thing, which is one of the reasons why I wonder if CPG people will end up being the more innovative people in the space, frankly. You know, I can imagine movie studio advertisers just sort of getting stuck doing pre-roll video all the time.
I mean, the great thing about that example was it fitted the way that people shop for their groceries. They stand and look at the shelf and they see everything available in front of them, and instead of going to reach it, you just had to go and scan it, right?
It's a very bottom of the funnel thing, but I would imagine it had a huge PR effect that would be top of the funnel,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So a lot of people wrote about it. I remember reading about it, seeing a video. I think they had a big video on YouTube that they tried to make go viral, something like that. So it's like it advances Tesco's brand as an innovative thing. Which sort of brings me to my next question about the bottom of the funnel, which is why are, and I touched on it earlier, I think I know why conversion rates are so low, but in e-commerce, why are conversion rates from shopping so low? And the background here is that there's a company called Monetization, and every quarter they pull out one of their e-commerce research. They do a study of e-commerce every quarter, and every quarter is pretty much the same. The thing that really drives most conversion in e-commerce shopping is, I think it's email, followed by search, then social and mobile. And social and mobile are still like tiny shares. You know, email, this thing we've had since '93, is like the king of shopping for some reason.
Right.
So what's wrong with mobile in terms of conversion?
It's an entertainment device fundamentally. I mean, it's a utility, but it's also intent. My opinion is intent is just not there a lot of times. My intent when what do people do most on their phones? They check Facebook. You know, like they literally, most of them, they're just on Facebook all the time, right? And so there's no intent to purchase. Like, you don't think of taking this device out. Now, again, remember in the early days of the internet, the search box was to buy stuff because people didn't even go to Amazon. They would just search for something and there would be a link to Amazon and they would click it to buy it. So it literally is an intent behavior. The question is, can we teach people to use these devices for this intent? And I think iPads and tablets have much better shot at it because of the form factor. Mm-hmm. Again, the phone is sort of snacking device.
Yeah.
It's
it's a utility, right? And
Yeah.
it's a utility in that sense in many cases where you're dipping in and out for short durations. We certainly see that for our usage. We're a utility app, which is different. But what would be interesting with that study is if you found people who are surfing from the couch on their phones, what would those conversion rates look like compared to those people that are dipping in and out?
Yeah, good point. Do you think Samsung's, its Galaxy S4 and its Note, these big phablet, are they changing this at all? I often think that Samsung's phones are basically iPads for men.
Do we think that
No, you can
it's
disagree if
changing
you like,
the
but-
shopping? I mean, I think that from the standpoint, well, first of all, I think that if you look at the data, what I've heard, and I can't necessarily cite the source, but the phablets are actually much more popular with the female the female demographic than the male demographic. Because they fit in the pocketbook. It's a little bit easier form factor than a huge iPad. It's more of a small tablet versus a large phone. Regardless, I think that those actually will help at the top of the funnel more because it allows you to provide a much richer, more more visually compelling user experience versus pulling it out when you're at a store or pulling it out when you're on the go, in a utilitarian fashion. I do also think it'd be interesting to dive into the data that you cited a little bit more to understand how much of the searching and the email was actually directed towards commerce in some way, right? Am I pulling up an email, which is a loyalty email from a retailer that I want to use a coupon or whatever that might be, a special, or is the search for the local store, or is it for a product recommendation or a product review? Which I don't think that anyone has really perfected the way to consolidate all the vast amounts of social data that's out there in service of driving a purchase and overcoming a barrier.
Right. Talk about Procter has a big presence on Facebook. Talk about that. How do they use Facebook? Because a huge piece of Facebook's business right now is mobile, as we all know, and they have a large number of ad formats, and some of them, including the mobile app install ad format, has been huge for them. What I hear about clients is it's one of their lesser-known ad formats, but the ones who use it and who know how to use it, that's the one that drives the biggest ROI. The app install ads. Is Procter doing anything like that?
We're not. Most of the work that we're doing in Facebook is driven towards driving loyalty and extending the awareness within the communities that they've already built. So establishing establishing product extensions, talking about what may or may not be relevant. For example, with CoverGirl, once again, their spokesperson is pink, or one of their spokespeople is pink. So the association with pink, and how is that, what's happening with her tour, et cetera, to that core community, which ultimately drives loyalty and ultimately drives more sales because of that product association.
Okay, and that's also about entertainment, because you were saying, Alex,
Exactly.
that people look at Facebook on their phones because they want to be entertained or kill time or just catch
but
up.
I mean,
on what happened.
this is perfect integration, I think,
Right.
literally. Like, that's an example of a great thing that brand is doing in a very smart way, providing a passionate piece of content and therefore engaging fans. I mean, I think that's perfect.
Exactly, and I think that the opportunity from a shopping standpoint is truly to figure out. I mean, in some ways, I think Facebook is like a nuclear reactor, right? Their greatest power is also their greatest risk, and the source of that is both the information that all of us put in there every day, and the extent to which they can leverage that without violating privacy and doing it in an authentic way.
Okay.
Because
we're almost out of time, and
Yeah.
I've forgotten to open this up to questions. So, does anyone have a question? We could take a couple, and then, yes, I see you.
Hi, I'm Rebecca from ESPN. I'd love to ask you guys about attribution. So I know I start doing my purchases on my mobile phone. I'll leave it in my cart. Then I'll go home and make the purchase on my computer. Same thing, putting the little address into the
Right,
little
yeah.
field. So two-part question. One, what are your thoughts on attribution and how that's affecting the mobile space? And two, is anyone doing it really well that's able to really attribute mobile sales?
Well, I think we've already had the example of the Amazons and the eBays. These guys are, of course, measuring that extremely well because you're logged in on both screens. So let's park those guys in one bucket. I think in terms of attribution in general, most of us accept in the mobile advertising space, and I think we didn't necessarily differentiate between advertising and marketing in this panel, and we've seen good examples of marketing and not so much on the advertising side for mobile still to date. It's been tough. The general assumption is that attribution is holding back spend, or that lack of attribution. I think the previous panelists discussed it as well. We're starting to see this emergence of cross-screen technology, the probabilistic matching of consumers across screens. And while it's not 100% accurate, it's certainly providing directional information now that's helping marketers and publishers determine the effectiveness of some of those programs. So I suspect over the course of the rest of this year, we'll see a lot more usage of that type of probabilistic cross-screen matching for reporting and for retargeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.